Alright, guys, so there has been some leaked footage from the scrapped Batgirl movie. This is, of course, a movie that was scrapped due to tax write-off purposes, because David Zaslav of Warner Brothers Discovery has a tendency to do that sort of thing. Um, and I'm not going to show any of it because I don't want to get assassinated by Warner Brothers ninjas. But I mean, if you just go to Google and you type in Batgirl leaked footage reset era, you'll find it. um, I gotta say, man, this leaked footage actually looks pretty cool. It feels a little Daredevilish, not like Netflix Daredevilish, where there's like there's an element of realism to it. There's a really nice fluidity to it. It's not like Nolan Batman where it's like a cut every 5 seconds and really stiff choreography. It's like, nah, man, this looks really, really solid. I like that this movie was seemingly taking into consideration the fact that Batgirl is a girl, and she's not just tearing through a bunch of guys. It's she's having a really hard time with it. She's she's getting thrown through walls and through bookcases. She's there's a moment where she has to pull a pepper spray and pepper spray the guy, and it's just based off of this 43-second clip. Obviously, I have not seen the entire movie. I'm yeah, I would like to see this. This actually looks pretty cool. And I thought it would actually be helpful to take a look at the original reasoning as to why this whole thing was scrapped. So, if we come over and look at what Peter Safran had to say, he said, Peter Safran is, of course, one of the co-CEOs of DC Studios. He said, Batgirl's character that inevitably we will include in our story, he said. Batgirl's a character that inevitably we will include in our story, he said, on the Batgirl front. It's not about late in the process of the film getting canceled. I saw the movie, and there are a lot of incredibly talented people in front of and behind the camera on that film. But that film was not releasable, and it happens sometimes. That film was not releasable. I actually think that Zaslav and the team made a very bold and courageous decision to cancel it because it would have hurt DC. It would have hurt those people involved. I think that they really stood up to support DC. He continued, the characters, the story, the quality of all that. I spoke to Adil and Bilal, those are the directors of the movie. It says the directors. Last week we were chatting. We'd love to be in business with all those folks. Christina Hodson wrote it. Some people are already back in business with us, and I said a lot of talented people were involved, but the film was just not releasable. It would not have been able to compete in the theatrical marketplace. It was built for the small screen. So again, I think it was not an easy decision, but they made the right decision by shelving it. Here's the thing about this. If it truly is the case that the movie was just bad, and that is possible, but I mean, obviously people make bad movies all the time, I think that it is totally fine to not release a film. Because there's a lot of sentiment on Twitter and stuff of people being oh, but the artist needs to be able to share their art with the world. The directors put so much work and passion into the project, and how dare you strip this from them? And it's just I understand the sentiment, but also, this is a business. That is unfortunately a valid thing to factor into the equation, and a movie like Batgirl, especially, is not just a movie on its own. It's not just some random movie that you can throw out there and it can live on its own. It's yeah, if you put out a bad Batgirl movie, when this all was going down, that would have hurt Blue Beetle, that would have hurt The Flash, that would have hurt Aquaman. It would have been just another domino piece that is probably going to hurt Superman to a certain extent. Because when you make bad movies in a connected franchise, even if some of it is Elseworlds and not technically connected. It hurts it all. And I mean, is there a better example of this than like the Sony Spider-Man without Spider-Man universe, right? Like, yeah, Madam Web or Morbius hurt Madam Web, which hurt Kraven the Hunter, which has led to that entire franchise just spinning out and not being a thing, at least for another few years. Like, they put a pause on it. So it's like yeah, what I have, if I'm Sony and I'm looking at the state of my universe and I'm going like, man, or like somebody brings up to me like, should we just scrap Kraven the Hunter, write it off on our taxes? You're damn right I'm considering doing that. And I mean, listen, when you look at the DCEU, yeah, like bad movie after bad movie really hurt them. Now, then comes the whole factor of, well, was this movie really that bad? Like, do I believe that this movie was worse than The Flash? Do I really believe that this movie was worse than Shazam 2: Fury of the Gods? Do I think that this movie was worse than Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? I actually would believe that it was worse than Blue Beetle, because I actually enjoyed Blue Beetle. But, like, was this movie really that bad that you're looking at The Flash and you're going, like, that's releasable? But, like, Batgirl, and you're going, like, oh. Well, here's the thing. These people do sometimes lie. Here's what James Gunn had to say about The Flash, The Flash, The Flashity Flash. He said, "Can I say one more thing? The Flash is effing amazing. Like, it's one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen." Director Andy Muschietti did an amazing job. I mean, listen, art is subjective, but I do not believe you, James Gunn. I do not believe that you believe that The Flash is one of the best superhero movies you've ever seen. I just don't believe it. Because if I did believe that, then I would be very worried about the DCU. So, like, yeah, like, it's like, I believe that James Gunn was lying about The Flash. I mean, he was definitely lying when he said that. And to be clear, he did say this in his initial like DC slate thing. He said that The Flash was going to end in a way that sets up the DCU. That was a fucking lie. Like, we're never gonna pick up on Flash being stranded in the George Clooney Batman universe. Like, we're never gonna see that storyline continued. He just flat out lied when he said that. So, when I look at the directors of Batgirl, there's admittedly a lot in the filmography of the directors that I just haven't really seen, but like what I have seen is good stuff. I mean, they made the last two Bad Boys movies, which are a hell of a lot of fun. They also directed 2 episodes of Miss Marvel. Now, just to be clear, they directed episode 1 and the finale. Now, Miss Marvel is a show that I think starts off really, really strong. Like, the first couple episodes, I think, are genuinely fantastic. The show weirdly jumps the shark and, like, they go off to, like, Pakistan. They just abandon all the storylines that I was invested in. Like, because it initially starts off in New Jersey. And then they go off to Pakistan and everything just gets abandoned. And then in the last episode, they come back to New Jersey. And here's what I will say. One of the most impressively directed episodes that I'd ever seen, because it has to, like, rope together all of these storylines. We have to come back to the storylines that we abandoned. And it's like, do I love the way that the show ends? No. But was I impressed by how much I actually ended up enjoying that last episode? Yeah, actually. And I think that goes to their direction. Like, these guys are talented filmmakers. So, like, I say all of that, and I'm like, could they possibly have released, or could they possibly have made a movie that was unreleasable, that was so bad that that Warner Brothers Discovery was like, hell yeah to Shazam, hell yeah to Aquaman. Oh, but Batgirl, no, nobody can ever see this. I just don't know that I buy it. Now, here are a couple of reasons why I personally think is like possible that the movie could have been scrapped. I think it might have been cheap enough, right, that it's reasonable for them to eat the cost, right? Something like Aquaman was possibly just too expensive that they were like, we got to get some theatrical return on this. But potentially could be the same thing with Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Obviously is the case with The Flash, to just eat that cost without even trying to get some box office return. That's a lot. With Blue Beetle, that was a movie that James Gunn looked at and was like, hey, we want Jolo Maridueña to continue as Blue Beetle in the DCU, so let's put this out. It's probably going to flop, which it did. But we'll just put this out there, and then we'll have Jolo continue on into the DCU. I think that the main thing that, at the end of the day, probably hurt Batgirl the most, and granted, this decision was made before James Gunn and Peter Safran took over, but they had to have been talking about their plans with David Zaslav before they were officially hired. I think that the main reason why Batgirl was ultimately scrapped was simply because of Michael Keaton's involvement. I think that when you look at how The Flash ultimately ended, I think that the original versions of that movie ended with Michael Keaton remaining on board as Batman. And I think that the decision was made to have The Flash end the way that it did, where Michael Keaton is off the table as continuing on as Batman, because I don't think that they wanted to give fans like false hope, right? Like they didn't want this movie to be like really great and get people excited about seeing Michael Keaton continue as the Batman. Obviously that wasn't a worry because the movie was terrible. But I can understand why they might think that that's possible, that audiences might really like it. And so I think when you make that decision with The Flash, because you're going to reboot your universe, well, then that leaves Batgirl in a really weird position where Michael Keaton's Batman was a really big part of that movie. Like, what are you going to do? And so I think that that's ultimately the reason why it was scrapped. I'm sorry, I just don't buy that these pretty talented directors made an unreleasable film. Could they have bought, I'm not saying it would have been, Schindler's List. I'm not saying it would have been Shark Tales. I'm not saying it would have been one of the greatest movies of all time. But when I look at what they do with the Bad Boys movies, do I think it probably had a lot of fun action? Yeah, I do. When I look at how he directs Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, I think is his name, do I think that there would have been some fun interactions with Leslie Grace and Michael Keaton? Yeah, I do. Do I think there would have been some fun fan service with Michael Keaton as Batman? Yeah, I do. Do I think that, what's his name? The Whale? Brendan Fraser as Firefly? Do I think that probably would have been a fun performance? Yeah, I do. So, that's my theory. That's why I ultimately think that the movie was scrapped. And unfortunately, I do think that it makes sense. I think from a business perspective, I think from a universe building perspective, I think James Gunn was handed over a mess, and he made certain hard decisions. And I respect it. And here's what I'll say. Peter Safran mentioned in the article that he said that Batgirl is going to be a part of the DCU at some point. They've talked about how there's going to be a Bat family. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Leslie Grace as Batgirl at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if they get these directors to direct something else in the DCU. You know? But either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.